Martin waited nervously with the other children who were told that they were candidates from adoption. He had been there for 2 years, since he was 10, after both his parents had died in a tragic car accident. He didn't have any relatives, so he was made a ward of the state and put into the Feminized orphanage for boys and girls. It wasn't an ordinary orphanage. He was constantly called a tomboy by the teachers because he liked the rough and tumble of a boy's life, playing football, getting hot and sweaty in the chase and working with his hands. The odd thing about the orphanage was that this type of behavior was not encouraged. The all-female staff, teachers and orphanage director Ms. Lace liked to encourage bratty boys, those boys that liked to be placid, constantly clean and neat, calm and interested in the finer things, like art, craft and fashion. For example, sewing, needlework and grooming. The two sets of boys were wide apart. The bratty boys looked androgynous. It was hard to tell them apart from the normal girl in the street, with their longish hair, hipster jeans and often slightly femmy tops. To Martin it seemed that it was usually the bratty boys who were adopted more frequently than the tomboys. The orphan girl, however, were encouraged to be girly girls, so were never given pants or jeans to wear and were usually dressed in pretty skirts or dresses. Over the years he had resisted all gentle persuasions to change from his tomboy status, of which he was proud. However, 4 months ago, at the time of the 6-monthly haircut day, he was ill and could not get his hair cut. The tomboy's haircuts were always left slightly longer than the usual boy haircut, so his was now past his ears and his shirt collar. It would be another 2 months before he would have an opportunity to get it cut, and now it was halfway in length between a tomboy and bratty boy. He was teased about the length of his hair by his friends, and as a school rule, boys with longer hair had to shampoo and condition it and use a brush instead of a comb. Already the teachers were insisting that he wear a ponytail and increasing their efforts for him to try out some bratty boy activities. It was about that time that a girl in his class, Robin, started to take an interest in him. She kept complimenting him on his hair, often volunteering to brush it for him. Occasionally he gave in, but usually he found that she would make his ponytail higher, like a girl's or a bratty boy's, so he would have to pull it down. Once she even convinced him to try on some bratty boy clothes, flares and a light blue singlet top with thin shoulder straps. Martin reminisced that it was lucky that he freaked and changed quickly when Robin had left the room, because unexpectedly, 4 bratty boys came into the room with Robin. They didn't actually see anything, but they did try to convince him to join them, seeing the bratty boy clothes lying on the floor. He quickly beat a hasty retreat. But now his thoughts turned to Robin again, as she had insisted that morning that since his good shirt was dirty, that he wear one of her shirts for the interview. Martin was wary of the offer, but she showed him that it was a plain light blue cotton shirt. He had agreed to wear it since he had no alternative. He didn't notice that it had little darts in the waist and chest area, that the top button was missing and that the selves were slightly gathered at the shoulder. He was roused from his thoughts when he heard his name being called. He stood up and entered the director's office, where he saw her, Ms. Lace, sitting at the round interview table. Next to her sat an attractive lady of about 35, fashionably dressed in a tight red satin skirt and matching blouse with a plunging neckline edged with lace. Martin gulped at the sight of such an attractive woman and walked to the empty seat. "Martin, I'd like you to meet Miss Satin. She is interested in meeting you." Martin said shyly, "Hello, Miss Satin, it's a pleasure to meet you." His eyes drifted down to her lace-lined cleavage as he said it. "I'm pleased to meet you too, Martina. I see you appreciate the lace on my blouse, and I think you would look lovely with some lace on your blouse too." Martin had heard the Martina, but turned red when he heard that she had noticed the direction of his gaze. With a mixture of embarrassment and relief, all Martin could think to say in response was, "Why, thank you, Miss Satin. I'm glad to see that you appreciate the same things that I do," Ms. Lace responded, "and my, what pretty rosy cheeks you have." Martin's grades have been good in all the classes and has taken a keen interest in football and other sports such as swimming, being somewhat of a tomboy. Ms. Lace said. "Oh dear," said Miss Satin, "I'm afraid that if you come to live with me you would need to lead a quieter lifestyle. I don't want someone who will be constantly running and being loud. I need someone who can help around the house and be quiet and composed, refined. Do you think you could do that, Martina? Ms. Satin asked. There was that mistaken name again, but being nervous after the first blunder, he ignored it, instead thinking that he wanted desperately to get away from the orphanage, thinking that he wouldn't mind helping around the house, fixing things, maybe gardening. He replied, "Oh yes, Miss Satin, I would like to help around the house, and I can be quiet too. Yes, I can see by your manners, your hair and clothing that you are trying to be more refined, prettier." Miss Satin replied and turned to face Ms. Lace before he could reply. "Thank you for letting me see Martina. Do you have any other candidates for me to see?" Martin knew he was dismissed and got up to leave. As he was walking out, he was thinking, Martina, where are they getting that from? As he was closing the door, he heard Miss Satin quietly say, "Martina has good potential but needs some preparation if she is to come and stay with me." He thought he heard Ms. Lace agree. It was a short and embarrassing interview, but as he thought nothing would come of it and he was already late for football practice, he soon put it behind him and ran off to change, thinking more of the fun he was going to have. 2 weeks later, he was asked to see Dr. Faye Dom, the school doctor, for a medical examination. He arrived at the infirmary and knocked on the door. It was known throughout the orphanage that Dr. Dom favored the girls and bready boys but didn't like the tomboys. "Come in," Dr. Dom said. Martin opened the door and walked in and walked over to the examination table, where Dr. Dom was pointing. "Please remove all your clothes and put on that examination gown, Martin." Martin was nervous as he didn't want to strip under her stern gaze. "Hurry up, no room for modesty here. I've seen everything there is to see, so don't be embarrassed," she stated. Martin stripped and put on the pink examination gown, which didn't meet at the back. Dr. Dom thoroughly took his weight and physical measurements, even measuring the size of his penis. She held his testicles and jiggled them, saying, "No sign of puberty yet. You're undersized for a boy of your age and you don't have any body hair yet." Martin knew he was small for his 12 years of age. Some of his friends were already starting their growth spurt. He was still the same size as the girls in his class. He had to try very hard playing football to still keep competitive. Martin was pleased. Now he was going to grow like the other boys. "I'm going to start you on a course of vitamins and hormones to improve your development, Martin. I will give you a starter shot now, and from now on you will report to this infirmary every morning before breakfast for a special vitamin tablet," Dr. Dom said. "Now turn around and I'll give you your first injections to get things started." Martin turned around and leaned over onto the examination table and winced as he was given an injection in each of his buttocks. "Now get changed and go to Ms. Lace's office. She wants to see you as soon as this examination is over," Dr. Dom said in her all-business tone of voice. Martin quickly changed and walked over to the director's office, wondering why all this attention all of a sudden. When he arrived, the director's PA motioned for him to go straight in. "Sit down, Martin," Ms. Lace said with a smile. Martin sat down, a little carefully after the 2 shots he had just been given. "Martin, we have a lady interested in adopting you, but there is a little stumbling block," Ms. Lace said, staring to look concerned. "Do you want to be adopted?" she asked. "Oh, yes I do, Ms. Lace, that would be wonderful," he said, "but what is the problem?" "Well, it's just that you are such a tomboy, we had to put that in your profile. She likes you, but she is concerned that you will be too loud, fidgety, and won't be able to do the chores required of you to be useful around the house." "Oh," said Martin, downhearted. "Now there is hope, Martin. As I said, this lady is interested in you. I've done some negotiating on your behalf and she is willing to consider adopting you if I can report that you can be consistently polite, quiet, and that you have attained the skills needed to be helpful and fit into polite society." "So do you think you can do that, Martin?" Martin did want to get out of the orphanage and he was full of curiosity about the lady who was interested in him. She sounded well off too. "Yes, I can change, Ms. Lace. I can be quiet and helpful. I'm good with my hands." He tried to sound convincing. "Good, Then I'm willing to tell Ms. Satin that we have put you into a 3-month course to develop those necessary skills, Ms. Lace said. Have you any questions? Yes, I don't remember Ms. Satin. I've been to so many interviews, I'm confused. Does she have other children? What does she look like? Martin asked. She has no children, and you may remember her because she caught you staring at her cleavage. Fortunately, she pretended that you were interested in her top and so avoided further embarrassment, Ms. Lace said with amusement. Oh, Martin said, remembering that it was an embarrassing interview. He tried to think what else was strange about it but couldn't quite figure it out. Now I have drawn up a new timetable for you so that you learn the required skills. House maintenance or keeping, grooming and deportment and voice training so that you look and sound more refined and are able to fit into polite society. You will take these with your regular classes, so I'm afraid you will have to sacrifice your sporting activities. You won't be alone, there will be other tomboys who need similar training before adoption too, Ms. Lace assured him. She handed him the new timetable and said that he could leave. Martin left with the timetable in his hands, happy that he had a good chance of adoption. Sure enough, he would be deprived of his sport and he would have to try hard to be accepted for adoption, but he thought it would be worth the effort. Once he was adopted and out of the orphanage, he could get back to the way he was. In the yard, he soon found other friends who had the same experiences, had been given the same timetable, all had offers of adoption, medicals, and had the vitamins too. Martin felt happy that he would be sharing the classes with his friends. The first class was on the next Monday, grooming and deportment, and they were instructed to come dressed as neatly as possible. Monday came soon enough. Each new class member presented themselves in their best clothes, shoes polished and hair combed. The teacher, Mrs. Style, welcomed them. Congratulations, class, for being considered for adoption, but you are all lacking in the appropriate refinements of behavior and appearance that will be critical for your adoption to proceed. So work hard at maintaining your grooming and deportment, and not just in class, for your adoptive parents will expect it. Martin resolved to work hard. After all, he would be out of the orphanage and be adopted by a beautiful rich lady. First came a general inspection of all the students' presentation where Mrs. Style took long and detailed notes. When Martin was called forward for his report, Mrs. Style said, "You have a long, long way to go, tomboy. Your hair is plain, your clothes show no style or refinement, and your shoes are ugly and dull. You are small for your age, so you will need a little help in the shoe department. And as with the rest of the class, your nails are a disgrace. Hands are a reflection of one's style and refinement." Martin. After the initial assessments, Mrs. Style handed each boy a nail file. All your nails are a disgrace, and first of all, you will learn how to look after them. They must be clean and well-shaped at all times. She drew a diagram on the board. First you must push in your cuticles, then file them in the oval shape you see in this diagram. Never cut your nails with scissors. I want you to start today, but you must practice and maintain them every day. They must be perfect at all times. I will inspect your nails at the end of the class, and you will be subjected to random checks at any time of day. If they are not perfect, you will lose marks and lessen your chances for adoption. Also, you must not shorten your nails, they need to be fashionably sized to be acceptable. So Martin began working on his nails. When the class had finished and the results inspected, each boy was given a little bottle of nail-strengthening lacquer that would protect the nails and were told to paint it on. They were also given a tube of hand and nail lotion that would soften their hands but strengthen their nails. After each student had finished applying the nail strengthener, they were told to keep their nails protected. Their next class was to be hair care basics. Housekeeping class followed. They were each given pale blue cotton aprons with a bib and a wide gathered skirt, which when tied at the back gave the appearance of a flaring skirt. They were given general house cleaning tasks such as vacuuming, dusting, washing clothes, and polishing. It was stressed that they must do all their tasks without damaging their newly renovated nails. They were conscious of getting their hands dirty and were soon asking for gloves when washing dishes or when handling dirty objects. They had unconsciously adopted distinctly feminine hand movements which made the teacher smile. Martin went to bed that night worried that his class and he were being turned into pretty boys, but he thought that he could go along with it for the 3 months, then he would be out of there and free to revert back to his boyish ways. He would try not to be noticed too much and keep his head down. After 2 weeks, he had gotten over the nausea that seemed to affect the whole class. The teachers said that it was probably a mild stomach virus that was going around. It only seemed to affect Martin's class, none of the other students seemed to get it. He now seemed to be calmer, as did the other boys. Even though he wasn't nauseous, a worrying thing happened to him that morning while he was in the shower and the water suddenly turned cold. His penis shrank to a quarter of its usual size and his testicle sac shrank, forcing his testes inside his body. When the water temperature returned to normal, his genitals did not. He quickly got out of the shower, hiding his condition from the other boys while he dried himself and got dressed. He was very worried all morning, but by lunchtime, things had returned to their normal size and position. The next day was awful for Martin. He woke up feeling nauseous again and he couldn't eat his breakfast. Over the last 2 weeks he had already lost a lot of weight and was beginning to look quite thin. He drifted into grooming and deportment class where he immediately got demerit points for posture and grooming. Mrs. Style inspected everyone's nails and he got more demerit point, but Martin could not gather enough energy to care. Through his nausea, he was aware that they were now getting new clothes and that he had to change. He put on the new underpants, but they were tight. Mrs. Style told the class the trick of tucking in their tackle, pushing their testicles into their bodies and penises under. He felt some relief from the dull ache when he accomplished that trick. He put his new pants on. He felt that they were lighter and had no pockets or fly. With his tackle packed away, there was no sign of bulge in front. The new shirts were a slinky smooth light pink material, draping over his body. The new clothes were put on early in the class, but through the haze of nausea, Martin hardly cared. As the nausea started to clear, he became aware that someone was brushing his hair and that there was a gentle tugging going on. Slowly he realized that Mrs. Style was plaiting his hair into 2 plaits. She was telling him that, from now on, plaits is the simplest hairstyle acceptable in or out of class now. More points can be earned for more elaborate hairstyles. You will need to try out more elaborate hairstyles with your classmates to become proficient. The last part of the class was devoted to nail care. The boys were told to file their nails and lacquer with the nail polish provided. Martin was gradually feeling less nauseous towards the end of the class and becoming more alert to the class activities. He looked at the first 2 nails that he had completed, wondering why they looked odd. He continued to paint his nails, looking at the varnish go on, slowly realizing that the varnish wasn't quite clear but had a distinct delicate pink hue. He realized that his nails looked quite feminine, extending beyond the end of his fingers in an oval shape. He realized that the hands belonged to a girl, not to him. He was a boy. He looked around the class, seeing some boys were still painting their nails in a daze, others with a questioning look on their faces. He exchanged puzzled looks with his friend Jamie. He looked at the boys, all dressed in soft feminine satin blouses with billowy sleeves, flared pants without pockets of fly. His tucked penis did not show up in the front of his pants, his plaited hair hung down to his shoulders, soft pink ribbons tied in bows at the ends. His painted toenails evident in his wedge-shaped sandals. He and the class looked like bratty boys. Martin stood up to leave as the class finished, becoming more alert to his situation. Noticing his mincing walk on his toes due to the height of his sandals. Looking down, he could see his puffy chest and large nipples protruding under his blouse. His smooth crotch completed the look of a young girl. The pressure on his bladder turned his thoughts to the latest directive for his class, to use the bratty boy toilets and to sit while peeing. He entered the toilets, noting the absence of urinals. He went into a stall, trying to stand to pee, but it was impossible. His penis had shrunk due to the tight pants. He gave up and sat down to pee. When finished, he pulled up his pants and noted that everything was still retracted, so his front was a smooth outline, his body curving under between his legs. Sighing, he exited the stall and washed his hands. Looking in the mirror, he became more alert and aware of his pretty boy appearance, no longer a tomboy in any way. He was gradually coming to the realization that this is not what he wanted. His anger was starting to grow. Was this what it would cost him to get adopted? To look more like a girl than a boy? He knew he did not want this. He was angry that he was being turned into something he did not like. It's not what he imagined when he started the new classes. How did all this happen without him noticing? He realized that the nausea everyone was feeling had dulled their thinking. But now he was aware of what has happened and his anger finally burst through. He looked at his image again with the blouse, flared pants, plaited and beribboned hair. He could pass for a girl but not as a boy. He angrily strode out of the toilets, past his classmates. He needed to feel like a tomboy again. He took off his wedge sandals and threw them away. He tore at the ribbons in his hair, pulling them out with chunks of hair, hurling them on the ground, then undid his plaits. He was headed for the football oval. He was going to play football with the tomboys and regain some of his dignity. He ran onto the field, running to get to the ball. To his dismay, the tomboys seemed to have grown taller, seemed quicker and stronger than him. They yelled at him as he tripped over in his bare feet. "We don't want any pretty boys here. Go back to your girly friends." He sat up, bruised and tears running down his cheeks. A fall like that would not have hurt him in the past. Now he felt pain. Was it too late? He asked himself. He would still try. He didn't want to be a bratty boy. Martin went back to the dormitory and found some old clothes to change into: older tomboy pants, loose underpants, t-shirt and shoes. He wanted his balls and penis back, and it would take hours without the constraint of the tight underpants he had been wearing. He had only just finished changing when he heard his name over the public address system. "Martin, report to the headmistress immediately." Martin went to her office with a thumping heart. The secretary indicated that he should go straight in. Ms. Lace stopped him as he was halfway to the desk. "Stop there, let me see what you have done." "Turn around." Martin turned around and faced her again. "I see by what you are wearing that you don't want to be adopted anymore. That you would rather stay here at the orphanage with us. Is that true?" "No, that's not true. I do want to be adopted, but I'm a tomboy, not a bratty boy," Martin replied. "Well, you have certainly made that clear. Your attitude is quite unacceptable. I will contact Ms. Satin and tell her that you are unsuitable for her and that she should consider the next candidate on her list. I must say, you have been a great disappointment to me. You were progressing so well, becoming more refined. For your behavior, you can cool your heels. You are on detention for the next 2 weeks," Ms. Lace said. "Oh, please, Ms. Lace, I do want to be adopted. Can't you give me another chance? Please," Martin begged. "Not unless you stop this nonsense and learn to apply yourself. After you have been adopted, I don't care what you do, but so long as you are here you will have to be committed to improving yourself and show perfect behavior for the next 2 months. Do you think you can do that?" Ms. Lace asked sternly. "Yes, Ms. Lace," Martin answered with some hope. "Well, you will have to prove it to me. I will put you on 1-week probation, and if I hear one more squeak out of you, you are out of the adoption program. Understand?" "Yes, Ms. Lace," Martin answered. "And another thing, to prove to E that you are committed, you will be given extra demands during the next week and I expect 100% cooperation. Is that clear?" "Yes, Ms. Lace," Martin said quietly, head bowed, chin on his chest, defeated. "Your first task is to tell the others in your class that the TM boys were horrid to you and that now you not only want to be a bratty boy but you want to go further and try out some girly pretty boy things as well. Then you have to show them over this week that you mean it. In grooming and deportment I want you to be enthusiastic and try out the most girlish hairstyles, choose the most girlish clothes. And if I hear one report of insincere behavior, you will have failed your probation. Is that understood? Yes, Ms. Lace, Martin answered. And from now on, I want to see you curtsy. Ms. Lace said with a wicked grin, assured she had turned this boy round. Yes, Ms. Lace, Martin replied again, but with a hesitant little curtsy. That was a horrible curtsy, Martin. Tell Miss Style that you want to learn how to curtsy properly so that you can show all you teachers proper respect. Yes, Miss Lace, said Martin, sounding like broken record while attempting a deeper curtsy. Martin left Ms. Lace's office defeated for the moment. He would wait for the week's probation to end, do what he had to get through his punishment, then gradually, when the spotlight was off him, gradually revert to being a tomboy. It was too late now. He knew he had to curb his impatience. He knew he would have to think before he acted. He went back to his room and, with dread at the first step, chose some pretty boy clothes to change into, put his hair into a high ponytail and selected lacy scrunchie to hold it in pace. In grooming and deportment, he asked Miss Style if he could learn to curtsy properly so that he could show proper respect to teachers. Followed by another wobbly curtsy. Miss Style beamed. Why certainly, dear, what a good idea, she replied. She then told the class of Martin's idea and told them that they would all have to learn to curtsy and to do it every time they spoke to a teacher. Even the most dedicated bratty boy glared at him, resentment showing on their faces. Martin realized that he had suddenly lost all his friends in that one suggestion. But he had to get through this week. 20 minutes of training was required before all the boys had learned how to curtsy to Miss Style's satisfaction. A long 20 minutes when Martin had to endure pretending his enthusiasm while bearing the mean, silent looks from his now former friends. Class, from now on, whenever you are spoken to by a teacher, you must curtsy when addressed and when dismissed. It is such a good idea that I will suggest to Ms. Lace that it become a school rule for bratty boys. Martin received another glare from the class. Now class, let's choose outfits that most suit your new refined personality from the class wardrobe. And don't be afraid to be more adventurous, try the softer fabrics, explore softer colors, urged Miss Style. Yes, Miss Style, they all answered, curtsied then broke off to choose the more masculine styles, while Martin drifted reluctantly to the more feminine side. He was shamed by what had happened, but he knew that he must keep up the pretense. His chances of being adopted were still on a knife edge. He gulped when he saw the clothing choices, but forced a smile on his lips and looked through the pretty boy choices. Miss Style saw him at the pretty boy clothes and quickly came up to him. I'm so glad you're attracted to the or refined section of choices, Martina, Miss Style said. Martin forced a smile and enthusiasm in his voice. Why yes, I don't know why I didn't look at these before, the choices are so much better. Yes, you're right, Martina, look at this light rose top, why don't you try that? Miss Style said, while pulling out a pink satin halter top. And these satin culottes go with it. Why not try these on? Miss Style said, pushing the selection into his hands. Martin could only smile as the butterflies suddenly took off in an angry swarm in his stomach. Thank you, Miss Style, they look just darling, he said. I'll choose some accessories while you get into your new outfit. I'm so glad you are willing to try out the pretty boy clothes. We can explore the collection of pretty boy clothes now. And it opens up all sorts of more refinements in beauty too, Miss Style said. Martin entered the change room. He slowly undressed and put on the culottes, a zip at the back and no pockets. The culottes fell to just below the knee and were so wide that unless he spread his legs wide, they looked like a pink satin skirt. No bulge showed as his penis and testicles were still hiding up inside him. He put on the halter neck top which flowed over the culottes. Now the two together made it look like he was wearing a dress. He noticed a white lace trim around the neckline and hem of the culottes. Tears started to run down his cheeks. There was no going back now. A little sob escaped as he contemplated his predicament. Again he let out a sob as he stared at the happy girl in the mirror. Hey Martina, why are you crying? I thought you liked this, he heard whispered from the other cubicle. Martin desperately wanted to tell him, but he knew he was on the first day of his probation. He suddenly thought someone must be reporting to Ms. Lace about him. How else was he called up to the office so quickly when he decided to join the Pretty Boys again? He didn't want to stay in the orphanage for another 6 years. Startled at this realization, he whispered back, "Oh, I do. It's just that the tomboys were so horrid to me. I know that I can't be one of them anymore. I'm just happy that I now know that I want to be a pretty boy." His stomach turned, wanting to deny every word as he uttered them. "Oh well, just don't be a shit and include everyone else in your little crusade, pretty boy," the unknown voice vehemently spat back. Silently, Martin cried for a minute, then sniffing pulled himself together. He dried his eyes and, putting on a false smile, walked out of the cubicle a pretty boy. Miss Style was waiting for him with her hands full of bangles and hair slides. She looked sternly at him saying, "Have you been crying, Martina?" Martin hated the fact that she now called him Martina but looked up, forcing a little giggle. "I was just happy that I looked so pretty that I shed a little tear," he said just loud enough for other close by to hear. He picked up the hem of his culottes, bowed his head and did a perfect, deep curtsy, the final evidence to his friends that he was forever a pretty boy. "But let's improve your looks a little more and get your ears pierced and your brows shaped." Martin forced an excited smile. "That would be wonderful, Miss Style," and curtsied again. Inside, Martin hated the idea. His eyebrows could grow back, albeit slowly, but ear piercing could still be seen even if they did close up again. Would this day, this week never end? "Well, that's settled. Now let's get you to practice moving in that skirt in a graceful manner," she said enthusiastically, forgetting they were culottes and adding more dread onto Martin. The class finished and Martin wanted to change back, but Mrs. Style said, "No, Martina, you're a pretty boy now. You need to keep up appearances at this more refined level. You need some more pretty clothes now, so keep that outfit. I'll select a new range of clothes for you." "Yes, of course, thank Miss Style. I'll look forward to trying them on," he replied, curtsying again, then turned and left the room. Once out in the yard, he knew that the whole school knew he was a pretty boy, and he had to tell everyone that this was what he wanted. The girls saw him in high new pink satin outfit and surrounded him, enthusing over his changed status. His friend Robin stroked his halter top over his chest area. She caressed his satin-covered thighs, generating a soft sensuous feeling in him. "Your outfit is so pretty, Martina," she said. Martin shivered at the new name. "Why, Martina, you must like the feel of the satin. You shivered when I stroked you through the satin." Martin gulped, smiled and reluctantly said, "I do." "Well, you must get some pretty satin panties too." Martin was forced to agree. They were interrupted by Ms. Faye Dom. "Why, Martina, I do like your new pretty boy status. Come with me, I can do something to enhance your new pretty boy status. You will look so much better." "Yes, Ms. Dom," Martin said, curtsying. Martin followed Ms. Dom into her examination room, wondering what clothing or jewelry she had in mind. "Now please remove your top, Martina," she said as she turned to a cabinet. "Sit still and turn your head towards the door and look up until I say." Martin did as he was told, hoping she wasn't going to put a bra on him. That would be humiliating. He felt her pinch his left breast and a slight pressure followed. The same thing happened to his right breast. But this time he thought it felt like a needle. He sensed that Ms. Dom has turned around again, so he took a peek in her direction and saw her put down a hypodermic needle. He quickly looked back. Ms. Dom told him that he could look at her now. Then she said, "Your nipples should feel a little itchy soon and your breasts will get a little put. It will settle down. Now if you go." Martin dared not question Ms. Dom, put on his new halter top and left the room. He was worried. What was that all about? He wondered. He looked down at his chest and saw that it was already a little more swollen than the Pretty Boys, but now they started to feel hot and itchy. What had she done? The next morning he was dimly aware that he had been scratching his chest through the night while he was asleep. He pulled away the blankets and looked T0 his chest. They were red from the scratching he had done, but the nipples looked swollen and stood out. the areola had reddened and seemed to be a little larger too. He got up out of bed and showered before any of the other boys got there. Back in his room, he wondered what he would wear. He now had 5 skirts and tops to choose from, courtesy of Miss Style, who had dropped them off the previous evening. He had 6 days to go. It was going to be a long week. Then he could slowly go back to pretty boy clothes, but he had to pretend he liked to dress as a pretty boy. At least his balls and penis were still making their appearance in the morning, before he put his tight panties on. He chose a blue skirt with a black lace-lined hem and a slinky matching top. The problem was that now his nipples showed through the top. What was he to do? He looked through high drawer. He found a very small singlet with narrow straps. He thought that would press his nipples down. He put it on, seeing that it did the job, but it was very short, only reaching the bottom of his ribcage, so it felt tight and strange. He then looked critically at his nails, filed them and painted them a light pink. He then plaited his hair and put in blue ribbons. He looked in the mirror and only saw a girl. Where had Matten gone? Would he be able to go back? His classes were torture. The boys would not speak to him, resentful that he had introduced the curtsy and that he was now a willing pretty boy. The teachers held him up as a role model and pressured other boys to follow his lead. The girls were infatuated with him. Having accepted him as a girl, they wanted him to stay with them and talk and do girl things. As he was eating lunch in the canteen, Robin and her friends Faye and Rosalind sat next to him. "I love your outfit, Martina. Such a pretty color for a pretty boy," Robin said, smiling. Martin so wanted to run away screaming, but he was careful. He'd reacted badly once and this was how he ended up. "Why thank you, Robin. I thought blue would look good on me, so I thought I would try it out." "Marina, I also noticed that you have on a sports bra. Are you developing?" Robin asked. Martin was startled. "A sports bra? I thought it was just a small top." "Are you sure?" he asked, alarmed. "I thought it would hide my inflamed nipples. They seem to have grown since Ms. Dom gave me those shots there yesterday." Oh, exclaimed Robin, obviously thinking rapidly, her eyes flitting from his face to his chest. "That's what she does to girls who are late in developing there. She turned her friends. Didn't Jay have that done? And in a month she went from an AA to AB cup." "Yeah, she did, didn't she?" Rosalind replied, also glancing at Martin's chest. Martin blushed and felt a knot growing in his stomach as he asked, "What does that mean, about cups?" "Oh, Martina, you do have a lot to learn, don't you, you poor dear?" Robin giggled. "It means that you are going to grow there and from now on, you shouldn't show your naked chest to any boys, even pretty boys. And soon you are going to have to wear a bra full time, whether you like it or not." The girls tittered, enjoying Martin's look of slow understanding, turning to horror. He nearly fell over backwards. "Wah, wah." He gulped. He couldn't speak. His self-awareness expanded, like horrid special effect on TV. He became acutely aware of the blue satin outfit he was wearing, its smooth, clinging texture seeming to suddenly feel like a vise of hardened steel, his being seen like this, a nightmare. Oh, I don't want to be a girl," he let out involuntarily. Robin stopped smiling and looked at him puzzled. "That's strange coming from you. I thought you wanted to be one of us, a girl," she said, the other girls mumbling agreement. Martin suddenly became aware of the implications of his revelation. He knew that he was sunk, so he decided to fess up. "A few days ago, I suddenly could think straight again, like I'd been sleepwalking for weeks. I saw what was happening to us boys who were taking extra classes to get ready for adoption. We were being turned into pretty boys. We were becoming more and more feminine. I got a shock and tried to go back to being a tomboy, but I was found out and Ms. Lace threatened that if I didn't change my attitude, especially this week, then I'd be overlooked for adoption and would have to stay here until I was 18. And I wasn't to tell anyone. But now that I've told you, girl, I guess it's all over." Robin shook her head vigorously. "No, it's not. Is it, girls? We won't tell anyone, Martina." We can help you survive this week, Martina, Faye piped up. Yeah, Rosalind joined in, we can help you fool Ms. Lace into thinking you've accepted becoming a girl. We'll give you some hints on how to behave and how to talk like a girl. She won't know a thing. Yeah, it's your only way out and we want to help, Robin said. Martin tried to still the scream that was threatening to break from deep within. He was still getting over the shock that his breasts would grow, and now these girls were wanting to help him be more like a girl. But I don't want boobs. I don't want to need a bra. And I don't want to be a girl. He broke into tears, sobbing. Robin stepped up to him and gave him a long hug until he stopped sobbing. Robin patted him on his back, tracing the outline of his sports bra. He calmed down enough to think of high options. He decided if the girls weren't going to report him, then he could try to get by with their help. Okay, he finally said, what do I have to do? It's simple really, just join us, do what we do, have a girly opinion on everything like we do. Discuss fashion, glamour, boy bands and makeup like we do. Fool them all, Robin said enthusiastically. It'll be easy 'cause you're with us, you're friends. Why will that help me? Martin asked. Because when they see you've accepted a girly girl role, they'll turn their attention away from you to someone else. Simple, Faye said. Then, when you're under the radar, just gradually get back to pretty boy, then tomboy if you can. Martin was still upset but desperate to grab hold of something, and this was plan. He nodded and said that would do it. Good, said Robin smiling. Make it like a game, it's not really real. Just pretend, think of the fun you can have fooling them. Martin smiled, he could see that it could be fun, and it was only for short time, he could go back to being a tomboy, but with these girls, he could turn the experience from being awful to being fun. Okay, now first of all, you're Martina, right? Robin said with a wink and a smile. Martin smiled, okay, he said. And let's replace that horrid sports bra for a padded training bra. Show them that you're embracing these changes, that you're not fighting it any longer, that you're looking forward to having breasts. Robin said, with a wave of limp wrist. Martin got into the act smiling, waving his limp wrist around. Why yes, I can't wait to see my new boobies grow. They went to Martin's bedroom, found a pretty blue padded bra that Martin had overlooked. Now show me your nipples before you put your pretty new bra on, Martina. I want to see what you were talking about, Robin said. Martin was self-conscious but took off his top and sports bra to reveal two rosy red areolas and enlarged nipples. Oh, Robin said, they do look like they are starting to bud. What's that? Said Martin, puzzled. They look like a girl's breasts, just when they are starting to grow. Don't worry. It all takes ages, and if they leave you alone, then they might go back to being normal. It can't get too much worse while you're still here, Robin said, trying to assure him. Martin nodded, putting the new bra on, feeling strange about wearing the bra but a little reassured. When he looked down at his chest, however, he could see that the new bra had shaped his chest, so he was looking at two more pronounced bulges. Robin saw him look worried. Martina, you've got to look like you want this, even to us. If you can't fool us, you won't fool anyone. Martin got the picture. He had to play a role where he was enjoying this, that he wanted to be more feminine. Later that evening, Robin entered Ms. Lace's office. Well, what have you to tell me, Robin? Ms. Lace demanded. You know your adoption depends on it. He fell for it, Ms. Lace. He's wearing a bra now, and to everyone he has enthusiastically joined the girls, not even a pretty boy any longer. Very well done, Robin. I'll make sure that your adoption papers go through as soon as Martina is adopted. That is all for now. Robin left the room smiling, thinking, and don't you mess up my chance to get out of here, Martina. Martin passes the probation period with flying colors, being caught up with his new social group of girls. He hardly noticed that a month had gone by. He started to like the fashions, taking a genuine interest in the materials, the colors, and how they made him look. His breasts started to swell so that he could take out the padding bras. Robin assured him that if nothing else was done to him, the growth will stop and finally his breasts would shrink. It did remind Martin that he was playing a role, but he also realized that playing it was getting a lot easier as he grew accustomed to looking and acting like a girl. He didn't even worry too much when he got a second set of shot in the breasts by Ms. Dom. He thought it would all disappear when he got out of there. Somehow, he forgot to worry, forgot to fight his feminization as he lived in a girl's world. One day, at Robin's suggestion, Martin was trying on a Halloween costume, a very girly pink chiffon dress, flaring out and ending at the knee. His hair was in an updo that Robin had done and held in place with butterfly clips. He had just put on some lipstick and mascara that Robin had also suggested when he heard an announcement. "Martina, please report to Ms. Lace immediately." Martin wobbled on his high heels, starting to undo his dress. "No time to change, Martina, just go like that. Ms. Lace will be sure to leave you alone when she sees you in that ultra-feminine getup." Robin smiled and assured him. Martin looked at her for a split second, thinking about what she had said. This was the most over-the-top thing he had done, and he would have to walk through the schoolyard looking like that. He finally thought that he may as well get it over and done with it. After all, it was only a role. Wasn't it? He thought this would finally show Ms. Lace that he had changed and she would leave him alone from now on, so he went willingly. "Please go right in," the secretary said as he entered the office. Martin opened the door to find Ms. Lace had a guest sitting at the desk facing her. Martin was puzzled for a moment why he was asked to go in when there was someone else seeing Ms. Lace. The guest turned around at his entrance and Martin was surprised to see that it was Ms. Satin. "Oh, there you are, Martin," Ms. Satin said. "My, you have developed in the last 6 weeks to a beautiful budding girl." Martin's jaw almost dropped, his throat constricted, he could hardly breathe. His face turned a deep red and finally answered, "Thank you, Ms. Satin. I'm usually not like this. I was playing at dress-ups with a friend when I got the call to come here, trying desperately to minimize the significance of his appearance." "Oh, but Ms. Lace tells me that you've turned a corner and found your true self. I'm so pleased. Now don't you worry about a thing, Martina. I'm here to finalize the adoption papers." Martin wasn't sure whether Ms. Satin accepted that his appearance was a one-off or that he wanted to be girly. He couldn't find a way of making it clear that he really was a boy at heart, especially in front of Ms. Lace, who was smiling broadly at him. Ms. Lace spoke up. "Yes, Martina certainly has found herself. We are so very proud of her. Martina, would you mind signing these papers while you are here?" He saw in front of Ms. Lace the stack of legal papers with the little yellow tags sticking out of them. "Just sign everywhere you see the little yellow tags, dear," Ms. Lace said. Martin took a chair next to Ms. Satin, who was smiling at him as he tucked the dress under him as he sat down. Martin took the pile and tried to read the legalese on the first page but couldn't understand it. Ms. Satin and Ms. Lace had stopped talking amongst themselves and Martin was aware that they were becoming impatient, so he signed in all 10 places. On the last document he had to first sign as Martin, then as Martina. He asked why he had to do that. He was assured that it was to clarify any mix-ups as he was calling himself Martina at the school now. Ms. Satin was gently rubbing his back for assurance, feeling the bra strap. Martin shrugged and unknowingly signed the document that would legally change his name and sex from male to female. "Good," said Ms. Lace. "Know that the formalities are over here. It will still take a while to get through the legal system, as you will have to stay here a little longer, Martina. You can go now." Martin stood up and as a matter of habit, and before he could stop himself, curtsied saying, "Goodbye, Ms. Lace, goodbye, Ms. Satin." "Oh my, what wonderful manners. I do like your curtsy, Martina. You must continue doing it when you come to live with me," she said. Martin left the room red-faced thinking, "What have I done?" Then he heard, "She has progressed wonderfully, Ms. Lace." "Thank you, Ms. Satin, it's all due to," was all he could hear as the door closed behind him. He now realized what a big mistake he had made. He was a boy, not a girl, and now his future mother had seen him dressed like a girly girl. He had to cling on to the one hope that he had said to her that he was just playing dress-ups. Maybe she would understand. Over the next month, Martin was left alone by Ms. Lace, and he gradually changed from his girly clothing until he was close to being a tomboy again, although he still had to go to his extra classes and had to have nicely polished pink nails and a feminine hairstyle. It seemed to him that they had forgotten him. That was far from the truth. Ms. Lace and Ms. Dom had considered everything carefully. Once Martin had signed the legal papers making him legally a girl and authorizing his continued hormone treatments, all was in place for his ongoing transformation. The drugs administered by Ms. Dom would slow release for the next 6 months after he was handed over. His penis and balls would soon be retracted permanently into his body, and his breasts would reach at least a B cup. Ms. Satin would be given the drugs to continue his treatment without his knowledge, a fact that sent a thrill up her spine. Turning a reluctant boy into a girl gave her a thrill, especially as she knew that he was trying to regain his boy image again. As Martin dressed for his final trip out of the orphanage, he was happy that he was going dressed as a tomboy, although his waist had shrunk and his hips expanded so his slacks accentuated curves that he should not have had. He decided not to wear a bra on this day, trying to stop the unruly bouncing of the little fleshy cones on his chest by wearing a tight t-shirt under his shirt. He wanted to hide them from Ms. Satin. Oh, how he hoped that his breasts would shrink once he was away from the orphanage. He now knew that Robin's assurances had not turned into reality and had continued to grow. He turned sideways in front of the mirror and saw that those pesky bumps had been compressed but still could be seen. He looked with relief at his girly clothes that he would be leaving behind, but with a strange twinge of regret. Was it the clothes of the friendships with the girls he had developed while wearing these clothes? He reached out and felt the soft silky blouses hanging in the closet, putting one to his cheek to savor the texture before turning his back on that life. "Come along, Martina," yelled Ms. Dom, "we haven't got all day." Martin put the blouse down and walked out the door. Ms. Dom didn't lead Martin the car but to the surgery. "Just 2 more vitamin shot for you before you go." Oh no, thought Martin. He had thought that the shots were finished. He just had to accept it. What difference will the last 2 make anyway, he thought. He started to roll up his sleeve, but instead, Ms. Dom undid his slacks and gave the 2 large shots into his groin, on top of his poor little penis. Martin grimaced as the last one was given. His little penis seemed to retreat in horror, just barely poking its tiny head from his body. "There, that's the last of those. You'll be a changed person now," Ms. Dom said with a wicked grin. Martin was anxious to correct Mr. Satin as he followed her upstairs to his new bedroom. The orphanage paperwork had mistakenly spelled his name as Martina, now Martina Satin. Miss Satin said to him, "Come along, Martina. I do hope you like your pretty new room." "But my name is Martin, not Martina. There must be some mistake," Martin said. "Hush now, Martina, there's no mistake. You yourself signed the document that changed your name." "I saw you sign it." Martin immediately thought of the documents he had signed but not read. What else had he agreed to, he thought. Miss Satin continued, "I don't know why they let you revert back to that awful tomboy look. I really don't. We'll see what some satin and lace can do to fix that." But, Martin began. "No buts about it, Martina. Now that you are legally my girl, I want you to look and behave like one too. This is a special day for me, so don't spoil it for me with silly little complaints." Martin was stunned. Legally her girl? What had they done? No. What had he signed, he thought. Too stunned to protest any further, he was quietly led into the bathroom. He would show Miss Satin that he was still a boy, his penis was still there. Over the past few days, he had kept out of his tight panties and it had made its re-emergence, even recovering somewhat from his recent shots. If he tried, he could even pee standing up. It was fickle though, any shock and it retreated like a frightened rabbit down a hole. Now strip and hope into the nice bubble bath here, Martina. Martin looked at the mountains of bubbles floating on top of the steamy bath. He could smell floral-scented oils. Now was the time. He had pulled down his pants and hopped in the bath, but Ms. Sading had turned her back on him while picking up his clothes, so missed seeing his penis. Oh well, he thought, she will see it when I hop out. She whisked his clothes away while Martin settled in to relax in the bath. What was that she said earlier? He thought, did she even know that he was a boy? Miss Satin came in with a pile of folded clothes and put them down on the bench. On top of the clothes were 2 Barbie dolls in swimwear. Here, I bought you in 2 of your new dolls to play with while I wash you, Ms. Satin said. Gasping, Martin only accepted them. He decided that he would wait until he could stand up after the bath to show Miss Satin that he was a boy. She would see his penis, then she would understand. So he dutifully played with the dolls, imagining that he was Ken, seducing Barbie. Meanwhile, Miss Satin was washing him with floral-smelling soap, taking some care around his chest. You are a budding beauty, aren't you, Martina? But I must insist that you wear a bra from now on, no going without, like you did today. And your hair is so nice and long, but it needs a cut and style, she said. Martin held his comments back, thinking that soon, it would all be over and she would see her error. He only had to stand up for her to see. Miss Satin washed his hair, then conditioned it. She then told him to stand up in the bath. This was Martin's moment. He stood up, but suds covered his little penis. He looked down when suddenly a cold stream of water was poured over him and his little penis retreated back into his body and he squealed like a girl. Miss Satin did not see it. There, it's only a rinse, and here's a nice warm towel to dry yourself off, Martina, she said. After drying him, Miss Satin wrapped the towel high over his chest, just like a girl. Now put these pretty pink panties on, Martina, she said as she held them out. They were satin with little flowers on the elastic. And please, no more complaints. The orphanage reported that you had reverted to your old tomboy ways. But I won't stand for it. I want to see the pretty girl I saw before, and I want to see those cute little curtsies too. Martin had nowhere to go. He put on the tight little panties that would keep his penis and balls retracted into his body. Now his situation was worse. Now they will stay in for hours before they would descend, and it was getting longer each time. He would have to sit to pee. He was led to the girl's bedroom, painted in a soft pastel pink, the bed covered in a pastel pink and blue cover and lacy pillows. Come sit at the dresser, Martina, said Ms. Satin. As she led him there, a pink dresser with a large mirror and bench seat was positioned in one corner of the room. It was laden with brushes, clips, and cosmetics suitable for a young girl. Martin sat down and stared in the mirror, and he had his hair brushed and blow-dried. Miss Satin parted it in the middle and plaited it, threading in 2 pink ribbons as she went. Martin could only stare at his image. Even without any clothes, he looked like a girl. Why didn't he look like a boy with plaits? He wondered. Now let's get you dressed. Stand up and take off the towel, Miss Satin instructed. He did as he was asked, his panties showing no sign of a bulge. Good, now put out your arms. Again, he did as he was told, and he was quickly strapped into a pink lacy bra to match his panties. He looked in the mirror and saw that Robin was right, he did need a bra. He couldn't show his chest to a boy again. Miss Satin then put a shimmery satin petticoat over his head and it floated down around his body. Next followed a satin dress falling to his knees. Miss Satin fastened the tiny buttons at the back and tied a big bow in the back. He couldn't get out this dress without help, he realized. Sit on the bed and we'll get you into some pantyhose. I'll show you how to do it without putting a ladder in them. I'm sure that silly orphanage didn't teach you half the things that a young lady like yourself should know, she said haughtily. She bunched up the legs and slid them on Martin's feet, pulled them up carefully, explaining how to do it. There now, she said as she finished, time for your heels. I hope you know how to manage heels, Martina. The white-heeled sandals with a 4-inch heel were strapped to his feet. He stood up carefully, remembering his days at the orphanage when he was a girly boy. He hadn't forgotten how to walk in heels. He walked up to the mirror. He saw himself fully dressed, not one sign of boy left. He could feel the grip of the bra around his chest and shoulders, the silky feel of the petticoat and dress, the coolness of the pantyhose and the gentle brushing of the hem of the dress on the back of his legs. He felt faint, trapped. He saw Miss Satin standing next to a pretty, slender girl dressed for a party. Well, there is certainly no sign of tomboy left in you. Those days are behind you now, darling. All I can see is a pretty young girl. Now, isn't it better to be a pretty girl? Miss Satin asked rhetorically. Before we go downstairs for lunch, I want you to start taking these vitamin pills once a day. They're for girls, so they don't have accidents. Martin took the little pill, he thought, so what's a little vitamin compared to what's happening? They looked like the vitamins he had taken at the orphanage over the last 3 months. He took the pill and was led out of the room and down the stairs. Moving made him more aware of his clothes, shushing and rustling around him, the tightness of the bra, the 2 little bumps, now more prominent on his chest, the emptiness between his legs. Who would know that I was a boy, even undressed? He thought to himself. As they entered the dining room, Miss Satin said, "From now on, you are going to practice being the perfect lady that I expect you to be. When you sit down, you must sweep your hands under yourself so that your dress does not get creased. And keep your knees together, you don't want to give the boys a free show, do we, Martina?" Martin reeled at the thought of boys spying on him and quickly put his knees together. Miss Satin sat opposite him smiling. "You look so pretty, but I have a surprise for you. After lunch, I am taking you to my salon where you will get a real pampering. A facial, a manicure, massage, you're here done. When you leave the salon there will be no going back to being a tomboy, ever." Martin gulped, and thought of running away. But where to? His escape from the orphanage was no escape at all. He had fallen into a worse fate. Miss Satin rang the bell for lunch. A maid dutifully arrived with 2 chicken salads. Martin looked at the small salad disconsolately. Miss Satin noticed his look of disappointment. "You'll get used to it, Martina. A girl must keep her figure, you know. And at your age, you must watch what you eat." Martina picked up her fork and contemplated her future, her new beginning. Good story? Or room for improvement? Please review.